Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome this morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's February 23rd, 2023 meeting. Please silence all your cell phones, and I'd like to take a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. I'd like to start with the roll call this morning. I'll start with Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
Jeff Culbertson's here. Doug Smith.
Here.
Mike Stephen. Here. We're going to public comment. I didn't have a list of anybody on public comment.
Is Vicky here?
Oh, the Commissioner Cause.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vicky Cause, are you here? By phone?
I'm here.
We about overlooked you.
We just about forgot you. I didn't have anybody on the list for public comment. Is there anybody in the crowd that has a public comment about agenda items this morning? Seeing none, we'll go to administrative business. Mr. Lothry or Van Paris or any of the commissioners have anything for administrative business this morning?
I have nothing to. I think those guys do.
I've got one thing. It's just on the back of my mind, and it's maybe a question for Mr. Knoll that perhaps Mr. Lothry can answer. The 2022 biannual bridge inspection, do we have that report complete where we have the list of bridges that are deficient?
We haven't received our latest.
Okay. We should be getting that, though, before long? Or?
I don't know the timeline on that.
I talked to Bill about a week ago about it. He's still working on it because we're going to spend extra time on it this time around to see where the expiration dates from the inspections are coinciding with ones that need to be replaced right away.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I think that we were probably going to have to make some tough decisions. I think I've been around the bridges now for over 40 years, and I know Leavenworth County has kicked the can down the road, and we should have been building 2 bridges a year all along.
Or 3.
There's years that we could not get funding for bridges. There was Dina Roque was in commissioner twice. He lobbied for bridges. The 2 times he was there, we gained some traction, but it just seemed like we couldn't get the funding for bridges. And bridges have been historically running about what a mill is at the county. I mean, it's give or take a little bit. It's in that ballpark area.
Right.
I'm afraid this year we're going to have to make some tough decisions. We may have to close some roads because we just don't have the funding for these bridges.
That's what it's looking like from the preliminary visit we had with that list. There's a percentage factor of the engineer that does the inspections on them kind of guesstimates how long you have left on this particular bridge. There's a time in the very, very near future where there's a whole bunch of bridges that are going to come due at the same year.
I'm afraid we're getting there.
Yep. That's always the can
I
to kick down the
just
road.
want to put that out there.
Yep.
And I was following Senate Bill 79 and 80 and pulled it up when I got home, and I'd seen you testified the other day. I didn't know you were going out there.
I didn't know either till Friday.
But I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that bill because I didn't follow it, and I was just shocked that you were there.
Sure.
That's a good idea.
I didn't bring the testimony with me, but basically the concept is we're trying to shift some of the weight off of property tax onto income tax. Because right now the way the tax system works is a few people are paying a lot of taxes. There's only 30,000 parcels in the county, so those are our bill payers. But there's 90,000 people, plus anybody who works in Leavenworth County, this would apply to, plus sales tax. So the idea is a lot of people paying a little bit versus a few people paying a lot. Senate Bill 79 is not exactly what we have in mind for the end result. My idea is if we could get a 2% increase in income tax and sales tax, we could cut everybody's property taxes in half. That's your boat, cars, real estate, all your property tax in half with a 2% increase for everybody on income tax and sales tax. Senate Bill 79 is not quite exactly worded that way. It's I think it's 1%, and it's just supposed to be an option for counties to be able to use that for a source. I think it's a step in the right direction, is why I testified for it. But we've got to shift the weight off of property tax onto something that's a bigger tax base.
Well, I appreciate you going out there and
Yeah, me too,
testifying,
Jeff.
but I was been following it, and I didn't know
Yeah.
you were going, and I appreciate that the Senate is taking this serious.
They are taking it serious.
Because in the past it just seemed like, oh, it's the county commissioner's problem.
Yeah,
You guys deal with it.
In one ear out the other.
And I appreciate the help they're
Yeah.
and
Listening,
the time
yeah.
they're listening. So
Yep,
let's
yep.
hopefully they'll come up with something
Yeah.
that we can all live with.
The thing I worry about is that we want to make sure it's not an added tax. So in Senate Bill 79, it says 50% of that has to be used for property tax. I don't like that part of it.
No.
It needs to be 100%, so
Needs
it's
to be
not just an
100%.
added tax.
Yeah.
But it's a step in the right direction. At least it's opening people's minds up to the system is the problem.
Well, Jeff, 2 years ago when I started, we didn't have that conversation. So at least what everybody's doing,
Yeah, they
y'all,
weren't
especially
talking
they weren't even talking. So at least it's in front of them now. So I appreciate you going out there,
I
Jeff.
was glad to hear that. Well, if we would reinstate the local ad valorem tax, how would this? You had a good answer for that.
Yeah.
So,
It didn't get shut
anyways,
down.
I've taken up enough of everybody's time.
No, that's good. That's
Question
good.
on that. My understanding is that would be a referendum in each county that would be voted on by the voters.
Yeah,
Is that
it'd be
correct?
Yeah, it had to be voted.
It'll be a vote.
So, and I think what you said is exactly right. If it was going to 100% offset property taxes, I think people would vote for it. If it was just going to be an additional tax,
And only part of it goes, and
Right.
the other goes for some slush
I don't think people would go for that
Yeah.
at all.
That's my concern too.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is my concern.
Yeah.
Are they contemplating it as like a payroll tax where it would only then be people who, for
Earning-
anybody who actually earns
earnings
in Montgomery
tax.
County?
Right.
B&E
Yeah.
tax, yeah.
So not like a true income tax, but an earnings tax that is payroll tax for Leavenworth County
Yep.
employees.
And sales tax is what our other concept is.
Okay.
And you capture the base
Whether you
employees.
live or work in Leavenworth County, it would pick up those wages potentially.
Yep.
Like other places have done. Yeah.
Mike, did you have something?
I did have a couple things. Question for County Administrator. There was some testimony in Topeka this week for the Kansas House Agriculture and Natural Resources Budget Committee, and a couple things were said that I would like to have clarification on or find out what we know. It was said twice at the committee that there's been a fire burning at the landfill facility at Flatlands since 1990. In fact, I'll quote it was said twice, but Representative Bloom questioned Representative Neely, and he said, "Why can't it be put out? It's been over 2 years." Representative Neely said, "Like I said, the fire's been going since 1990." Do we have any kind of record indications, facts that indicate that the fire at the landfill's been burning since 1990?
Well, Commissioner, I'm aware of the current fire was February 22nd of last year. That's when the fire department made a response out there. That's the only one I'm aware of. I'd have to review any of the, I guess, probably KDHE reports from that time forward, as I know they would log that within their annual or biannual inspections. So, but I don't have record of that now.
Could you review that and report back to us, and so we can figure out if that's the facts? That's a real.
It may require a records request from the state. I don't know that we would have that. So.
And I'm a little confused because earlier in Representative Neely's testimony, he said there was no fire and there was no smoke. Then later he said this fire has been burning since the county owned it. So I don't know what he means.
Yeah, and that was concerning. We brought testimony from residents of Easton that live right adjacent to the landfill, and they testified, and we showed the testimony to the committee that some days the smoke is so bad they can't hardly come out of their homes. Some of them have problems with throat problems, that kind of thing. And then we have Representative Neely say he's on top of this, and He's never talked to me about it, and I know that
Never talked to me about it.
we've had multiple community meetings about this. It would seem that if you were on top of it, you would participate in those community meetings, and that to me is an issue. And I would certainly hope that he would come to a community meeting in Easton, and we can have the folks talk to him and tell him their experience. One more thing from the testimony up there when he was talking. Here's a quote. It's actually been on fire when it was owned by the county. There were multiple fires, he said. And then he said that the county's original mishandling of this situation was so egregious that it spurred the county to vote to pay for a $200,000 settlement lawsuit for the persecution, harassment, and shutting down of the landfill. Just for our attorney, signing a settlement does not indicate that the county admits liability for any specific thing. Can you kind of reflect on what a settlement means?
Commissioners, it's an agreement to end litigation. In the specific settlement agreement you're referencing, neither party acknowledged responsibility or liability on their parts.
So when that's being said in Topeka in front of a legislative committee, we had the committee agreeing that we thought we had KDHE on the verge of coming out and putting this fire out. And then we have contrary testimony, and now we are back to square one. That's the bottom line.
Bottom line has been put back on the county to handle.
So that's all I have.
Oh, yeah. Mike, do you have something?
No, I don't. How about Vicki?
One other thing. Bill Knoll did let me know that they do have the inspection report. He just hasn't had a chance to review it completely and release it. So it will be part of our CIP presentation.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Vicki, did you have anything for administrative business?
No, I don't. Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to.
Jeff, one more thing.
Uh-huh.
I did forget this.
See, Mike's always got one more thing.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
well,
Mike.
this just, I did forget this. Representative Neely also said that there was testing done on the 10th, and that he indicated that was the county's testing, part of our MOU, and that was what he alluded to in the testimony. I could read you the transcript. That's what it says. Has our testing been done, or where are we at on that?
No. Commissioners, as I'll let you all know, earlier this week, both sides have agreed to they've selected their engineering firms that are going to be figuring out what the scope of inspections look like. They'll meet in the next 2 weeks. I think it's the week after next. They're setting up a time to meet, talk about who's handling what and what the scope will be. So no testing has been done as part of this agreement. So therefore, no results could have been come to it, or conclusions came to it this time.
So we have no idea what he was referencing.
That's a good point, Mike, because he said that the testing was all done.
Yep.
Okay.
Not from our side. I mean, maybe it's KDHE or something.
Okay. Did you have something else, Mark? You said? No. You're done. Vicki, did you have anything? She said no.
She said no.
Let's move on to consent agenda then. Does anybody have any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda?
If not, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Voting, start with Mike Smith.
Aye.
I vote aye.
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 Passes. Vicki,
I just want to take your place.
Aye.
She said aye.
Okay.
I just want to take your place on that, Jeff.
Yep.
You're doing
Passes 5-0. We'll move on to formal board actions. First up is consider a motion to approve case number DV 22-167 and 168, a preliminary and final plat for Oak Ridge Estates Second Edition. Morning, Amy.
Morning.
Great. Morning, Amy.
Okay. Before you is a request for a subdivision at the property. Well, it doesn't have an address. It's off of West Washington Street, which is a city of Tonganoxie Street. The property in question, they are wanting to divide it into 2 lots. Both lots are, one is 3.16 acres, the other is approximately 23.14. This request did require a variance because the property is zoned PR1, which has a maximum lot size of 10,000 square feet. Obviously, 3.16 acres and 23.14 acres is above that, so they needed to get a variance, which the Board of Zoning Appeals did grant on February 8th. In addition to that, they also need two exceptions. One is for the non-parallel or perpendicular line that they are creating to separate the two lots, and the other is the lot depth to lot width requirement for lot 2, which is the 23.14 acres. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this 6-0 at their February 8th meeting with those two exceptions. Staff did not recommend approval. I will say that this was sent to the city of Tonganoxie because this is adjacent to the city. It actually is bounded on 3 sides by the city limits. The city did not have any objection to the variance or to the plat. So if you have any questions, happy to provide answers.
Mr. Chairman, you ready for questions?
Yes, we have a discussion.
Is there sewer there?
There's not sewer, and that was the reason why they needed the 3 acres. The city of Tonganoxie stated that for them to allow sanitary or a private septic system on the properties, they would have to have 3 acres or more. Sanitary sewer is actually across 2440 from this site. West Washington Street is a dead end.
Right.
So that is the reason. From the applicant, the owner's daughter is wanting to build on the property. But to get a loan, they couldn't get it for the full entire property. They had to split off a smaller section. So that is where the request is arising from.
I'd say if the city of Tonganoxie is okay with it, that's kind of a major hurdle.
I think probably the biggest concern on our end would be the depth to width ratio. That the frontage on this lot is very narrow. Which creates a depth to width ratio issue. But I think that they're anticipating a roadway through there at some point in time. They just aren't building it at this time.
Yes. Also from the applicant, their intention is to hold that until a development is feasible in that location. They also own a property that is adjacent to the south there. So they designed it in a way that a roadway would come through that little appendage that touches West Washington Street and then would route around to 2440. Once again, when sanitary sewer has been extended across 2440 that way.
How did the lot end up? I mean, what's the history of this? How did it end up in this shape?
I did not look into the history necessarily of it. I do know they own the adjacent property to the west, and they did subdivide that at some point. It is, however, within the city of Tonganoxie. So as to the whole history of how this got to that shape, I don't know for sure. It seems like this area has been part county, part city for some time.
It's an unusual configuration.
Right, it is, but
Well, it's the city of Tonganoxie. It's right up against Tonganoxie, though. So.
Yeah, and it's in would be 3 units per acre zoning.
Approximately, yeah, for future land use. The zoning district, because it was part of the county route corridor
Right.
1, rezoning is PR1. So you're looking at single family development from about 6,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet is where that zoning is built for.
And then that would require annexation and sewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to ask the applicant about annexation. I believe they mentioned that once this property is developed, they would be annexing into the city because there is water
That makes sense.
along there. And so once they get to that, I'm sure the city of Tonganoxie.
Yeah, that's the way it usually works.
In my 2 cents, even though we didn't adopt the 3-mile ring urban growth area, that was proposed a couple of years back, I use that as kind of a guide.
Me too.
If the city of Tonga is fine with it, then
That's the way I am.
Yep, me too.
If the city had an issue, I'd be more concerned, but if they're giving their blessing, I'd say.
Doug, I'm absolutely. When you see the city's okay with it and they're going to eventually be part of it, I totally agree with that statement.
I do too.
any more discussion?
Not for me.
Ready for
Vicky?
ready for a motion?
Vicky,
Wanna do it?
I can.
It's your area.
Let's see here. Motion to approve case number DEV 22-167 and 168, a preliminary and final plat for Oak Ridge Estates, second edition.
I'll second that.
Have a second and a motion. Any more discussion? Voting starting with Mike Smith.
Aye.
I vote aye.
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 Vicki?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Second formal board action item, consider a motion to award bid to ISG for the server virtualization project in an amount not to exceed $289,658.32. Morning, Larry.
Good morning.
Morning, Larry.
I believe this is a rare occasion where Commissioner Culbertson is the chair.
Very rare.
Is this the first?
Don't get used to it.
Is this the first time?
He's doing great. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. He's on a roll here, Larry. Okay.
You're going to get him off kilter.
I even got my fancy tie.
He's on a roll here.
Very nice.
I even got my fancy tie on.
You're doing wonderful. You explained it all. Yes, high availability server project, $289,658.32. This is the disaster recovery high availability component of the server virtualization, which we've already completed a few months ago. This would be housed at a separate facility. I would encourage you to do this because it's going to provide us an extremely capable continuity of operations disaster recovery scenario where we could fully operate all these servers out of the Cushing facility should the courthouse, for some bizarre reason, become not on the network or unavailable. Not to be tragic, but let's say there was a fire and they flooded the whole building, and the basement, of course, is now 10 feet deep in water. Everything down there is going to fry. We could still operate out of Cushing building and function. The other buildings would be operational. So it would be a very good continuity of operations plan, disaster recovery plan, and it's coming out of ARPA funds.
That's where it's, I was just getting ready to ask.
We don't have a budget for
We got that. We got it budgeted for that, Mark. Okay.
Commissioners, over a year ago, I believe, Mr. Marlboro came in and we presented to you some improvements to the countywide network for both redundancy and security.
Right.
We completed the fiber loop later last year, I guess. I was going to say earlier this year, but it was actually later last year. Without the fiber loop that we created, we wouldn't be able to do this project efficiently. So that was done. This is the next step. Really, the reason it's coming back is you've already approved the concept, but we're asking that this is a sole source purchase because they are also the ones who set up our virtual server farm that we just finished here in the last month or so, and this would be a continuation of that.
Makes sense. Okay.
We don't want to have to try to bring another firm in and
Gotcha.
re-educate them on what we already have. So that's why we're asking the board today.
I was just wanting to confirm that that's what we set the
Yes.
money for. So good.
And Larry, a lot of times we try to put a dollar amount on if we were not to do this and the problem happened, what would that cost the county? It would be very hard to put a dollar amount.
But yeah, you can't put a dollar amount. What it becomes is an inconvenience factor, if you will. You don't have to do this. We've operated without this. I think I put that in the alternative options forever. We've never had this type of DR site. So
Because we haven't been able to afford to do it.
let's say that scenario I played out where the basement's flooded and everything down there fried. Well, we're not going to have any mail services, all that network services, the file storage and all that's gone until new equipment can be, first off, arrives. You buy it, it arrives. Then it has to be deployed. Then we have to do restoration of the data. So you could be looking at a matter of weeks to where all of the county's technology infrastructure is largely not operational. So everything that depends upon that comes to a halt. Now, district court would still function. Their software is in Topeka. Movers would probably still work at the treasurer's office. They're a Topeka-based state application. Orion is out of Topeka. So these cloud-based things, as long as we can keep an internet circuit going, they can still function. But all the data that the GIS relies on, which would, of course, that's right down your alley, all the U drives that everybody has, all their personal data and their department data is gone until we can prop all these systems back up. So it would be really bad. I know a lot of pitchforks would come out, a lot of torches would be People be calling for my head because it's taken weeks to get everything back up. It would be a nightmare, but you could do it. We've always ran with that risk as being an acceptable level of risk because the money, right? That's what it's always about. Is it worth the money to not have that risk hanging over our head? Well, it's 2023 now. A lot of things have changed over the last 20, 30 years. This is not an uncommon thing to do. Most enterprises have a DR site, capable ones. And that's what we're becoming. I mean, we're not the same county we were 20 years ago. And we're dealing with a heck of a lot more data than we did 20 years ago. Everything warps up.
Yeah.
This would be a very responsible thing to do, in my opinion. And going forward, I know it's ARPA funds initially. You would have to replace this from probably tax funds down the road. But it can be ameliorated by multiple years to save up to be able to afford to do the replacement down the road. The initial investment was always an obstacle we could never get over.
When you talk about replacement down the road, what timeline is that?
7, 10 years.
Okay.
A lot of this equipment.
So this is just
and
protection.
it's
This is
gonna last
security.
a long
Okay.
time.
Okay.
So this will just be set up on an amortization schedule in your budget.
The equipment reserve would have to, yes.
Accept
We
it,
had
yeah.
covered that, I think it was more like 2 years ago when we had our initial meeting about this. And I had shown we're going to have to increase the equipment reserve that we're asking for in the IS department over the years in order to be able to replace all this in a 7 to 10 year schedule. And that's what I built when we had first pitched this in a work session, I believe it was, 2 or so years ago.
Yeah.
And yes, it's going to be more expensive when I keep asking for more money each year, but it was a gradual increase, and it's not going to be too significant when you deal with it over that many years.
So the only downside of this is if we don't adopt this, your head's on the line.
Well, possible weeks of outages, which, I know that would definitely stress me out for sure. But the other departments would also be stressed out.
I think
Flooded
that,
basement.
I think that there's all the physical risk of a flood or something like that, but there's also the mechanical or the outside risk that this helps to mitigate as well. And Larry says weeks. I think that would be generous. We've had some equipment purchases recently that were months.
Right, the supply channel problem, it has been. I'm assuming that will clear up at some point in the future. It's
don't
never
think
been as
it
bad
will.
as it has been the last year or two.
Well,
He's right there. If that continues on.
And I can tell you from helping the city of Greensburg, Kansas, after the tornado, anybody there would tell you this is a really good idea.
Yeah. That's a good example.
So it would be nice if Cushing was, say, 20 or 30 miles away. It's not. It's just a couple of miles, but it's still further than across the street. So that's as far as we can. We don't have this physical space to do it out of the health department where we do that because that's 5 miles away. But they don't have the area. So I think it'd be wonderful if you approve this, but you don't have to. Is what I'm saying.
Stay positive, young man. Stay positive.
So
I'm not a good salesman. I agree with that.
I've noticed that. You're doing fine, Larry.
as far as the ARPA funds, though, this was something we had already.
This is already allocated. In there.
Yeah, that's the key right there. The money set aside. Yeah. Need a motion?
Well, I think it's a.
I am ready for a motion.
Doug, you want to do it, Doug? Either one of us.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we award the server vitalization project to ISG in the amount not to exceed $289,658.32.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion?
As computer technology develops, this is
world
like
we live in.
a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well,
you know.
and like I said, if you talk to anybody from Greensburg, they're going to tell you they wish they would have done this.
And it's just going to get more and more and more.
On a personal note, by the time you guys put me out to pasture, this place is going to be in such great shape. I'm going to be really sick to my stomach.
But you're going to have your head.
I'll have my head, but it's like now that everything's working great, you've got all of this. See you later.
Well, you know what, Larry, you know what they say. What they say, a good person is a person that plants a tree knowing that they'll never get to enjoy the shade. And that's exactly what you're doing. I'm glad you brought this forward.
Like remodeling your home before you sell it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't like that example, but yeah.
I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Vicky?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. That's all we have for board actions. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Additional comment? I don't think anybody signed up, did they?
I'll do executive first.
What's that?
I don't think anybody's here, so
Okay.
we got executive.
We're not going to do the executive session. We don't need it after all.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll cross that part off. Additional public comment if needed. Nobody signed up. So before adjournment, does anybody have?
I have just a couple of
Go ahead,
adjournment.
Mike.
Attended the ribbon cutting in NetCap. That was really building out in Lansing. That's a really a quality place. Had the opportunity to learn a lot more about it than I was aware of. If you don't know, it's located off Gilman Road in the city of Lansing. Also, just let you know, and I'm sure y'all, I'm going to attend at least for a little while because I think it's from 5 to 7. The K7 and Parallel Improvement Project. It's tonight. Is that correct?
Down at Bonner.
Yeah. So I'm going to step in and see that. I'm kind of curious on the way it's laid out. That's all I have, Chairman.
Okay. I attended 2 sessions in Topeka. One was on KDHE, and the other was Senate Bill 79, like we talked about a little bit earlier, that the gist of Senate Bill 79 is to allow counties to trade some of the weight on property tax and put it on earnings tax. And they also had the Leavenworth City Council meeting. At the city, they were talking about the trash service and what else did they talk about, John? At the city of Leavenworth meeting, budget. It was their budget bond. Went over bonds for like an hour and a half. That was riveting. Yeah. And then we had the Tonganoxie Task Force last night. A group of people that Commissioner Stephen put together to work on things like taxes and sales tax,
good turnout.
tax. Yep. That's all I have. Doug?
Let's see, we went to the ribbon cutting, Council on Aging, and the Extension Office. You guys were there too.
Yeah, forgot about that.
The Little Stranger church fundraiser.
A lot of people turning.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Then I had Basehor City Council last night, and I'm going to go to the K7 Parallel, I guess, informational meeting tonight.
That's what it sounds like.
And I also got the Fairmount Township Board meeting tonight. And did any of the commissioners go with Mr. Lawfrey yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then I'll let you. All right, that's all I got.
I was at the Council on Aging ribbon cutting as well. And then yesterday we did attend the Pantex Collaboration Committee. I don't know if that's the actual title, but they're a collaboration of stakeholders that are going to be impacted by the new battery plant and how that's going to impact housing and how that's going to impact infrastructure and all the. It's a multi-county group, and we're going to have another meeting on March the 20th, and it's kind of, we've had 2 meetings now, and they're kind of like funneling down to more specific things that are going to be the issues that are going to be being looked at. So that very good. And
Has housing been discussed?
That was like rated as the top. Was it one of the top issues?
Yeah, so that is something that they've been talking about since this, I think probably from the beginning, but now that they have these committees where more people are attending, yeah, that was listed as one of the priorities. I don't know that they've really discussed a plan on how you address it.
Because supposedly that was the number one deficiency when they did the one in Nevada.
And
the whole housing was the problem.
Tom Cole and I talked with the Nevada group a few weeks back, and just to try to see if there's anything that we could gather from them. And one of the things they said that, one, they didn't have enough housing, they didn't have enough apartments, but and then 2, that the housing in that area jumped like 26% in value overnight, within weeks. But there's quite a bit of difference between us and the Reno metro area. One, they had 8,000 jobs that they created from the start. This is 4,000. Two, their metropolitan area has a population of about 5,000, and the Kansas City Metropolitan Workshed, that they call it, has about 2.4 million. So we're quite a bit bigger, and they're a lot fewer numbers. So I don't know that it'll have that kind of an impact, but it will definitely it will be felt in that area.
Well, that's the thing that concerns me is the prices of housing. When the state says we have to figure our property tax based on valuations of your homes on comparable sales.
It doesn't matter how much you make.
Right.
It will. I think it's going to keep the housing market probably from dropping, like some places are starting to see with the increase in the interest rates. I think that is going to probably put more demand in our market than there already is, and we're a few years behind on the current demand, probably a year and a half to 2 years behind on our current demand. So that will just make it a little tighter. So it will impact prices, but I don't think it's going to be like the 26% overnight they saw.
They had
some of ours are close to that now. Did we have 23 in Linwood last
27% 2 years ago.
2 years.
I don't know what it was last year, but some of the issues they talked about at this thing that they were ranking high was lack of workforce.
Yeah, we already have that now.
And then these are the issues that they are obstacles to realizing the opportunities of this battery plant. Lack of workforce, public infrastructure, child care, housing stock, transportation for employees, and funding for infrastructure needs is on there twice. And some of the categories, it was like they overlapped. But it was a good conversation, and I think it's going to keep, and we're also having conversations with DOT, and people's like, Golden Road is going to be impacted. Some of our infrastructure is going to be impacted, and if your $4 billion appropriation that you put towards this, that's not just for Johnson County. That's not just for Douglas County. If it's impacting Leavenworth County, it needs to be looked at.
Part of it, yeah.
Maybe that's why it's on there twice.
Maybe so.
One for Johnson, one for Leavenworth. Because that's where all the money's going to go.
I know that's true. Went to this collaboration meeting, and then I also went to the Centennial Bridge event that they had up here at the riverfront, and it was interesting. Got to talk to Ryan Barrett and Kelly Coltalaw were there. Got to have a conversation with them. Property Tax Task Force last night, and we basically that's also coming down to a funnel. We talked about the Senate Bill 79, and we don't exactly we like maybe modifying that to where it's 100% taking the property taxes off, and then we told them talked about the plan where you wouldn't have an increase more than the rate of inflation and possibly 1 or 2%, and getting an actual piece of legislation introduced for next session or next year in the legislature.
That's for everybody. So we'd have to do away with comparable sales. The state would have to do away with comparable sales.
Well,
you want to keep
it wouldn't exactly. It would stop the
property
spikes.
Sells, then
Right.
it's got to go to current market value.
It was what we talked about.
It would be easy, but
Right.
they would have to change the statute.
Mm-hmm.
They might even have to change the Constitution.
Yeah.
We might have to have a statewide vote on it. But anyway, we're going to come with these proposals next time, and then we're going to invite the legislators to come and see if we can get them to buy into it.
Well, I'm just impressed that there's discussion at the meeting on it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Finally.
But lots of stuff going on. It seems like the last 2 weeks have been really busy, and also continuing to get a lot of contact from folks up, and we have not forgotten the folks up in the Easton area continuing to contact us about the environmental situation up there, and we are concerned about it.
Yeah, I'd suggest those folks up there, and I know Jeff, you and Mike are doing it, are paying attention on who's trying to fix this problem and who's causing issues that we can't get it done or dragging it out, whether it be elected officials or anybody else.
Is that all you have, Mike?
That's all I had.
before I ask Vicki, I want to put some more light on the Council on Aging ribbon cutting. I think that's important for people to understand exactly what happened there. And Vicki was very instrumental in securing that Cushing building to get this to happen.
Absolutely.
When I started, one of the goals I wanted was to get rid of paying rent for Council on Aging.
Yep.
The county taxpayers were paying almost $100,000 a year for rent and building costs.
And we sold the building for $100,000.
Yeah, I didn't want to go back that far.
Well, I do.
We made a bad deal to begin with. selling
Not
that
we.
property. Not we. Not we.
Doug always throws that in there.
Made a bad decision.
Doug always corrects that. Not we.
We sold that building and then rented it back. And it was costing the taxpayers about $100,000 a year
Yep.
rent for a building we used to own. So I said, this is a terrible idea. We need to either build them something or buy something. But somehow I got twisted into Commissioner Culbertson wants to shut down Council on Aging.
Oh, yeah.
I said, no, that's not my point. Right. I said, I don't want to pay rent anymore for Council on Aging. So, the end result is we want to rent out the third and fourth floor. And so that building for Council on Aging, not only we're not going to pay rent anymore for Council on Aging, but it should be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
We can get
That's
the
the
third and
goal.
fourth floor
Yeah.
rented
Yeah.
out.
You're right, Doug.
It'll pay for the utilities in the building for Council on Aging and all the other county offices that are in there. So it should be completely self-sufficient in the end result. So I just want to make sure everybody understands exactly what happened there with Council on Aging. That's all.
And the county commissioners kept their word on being a good steward of that building when it was donated to us.
Yeah. So that's all I have about
That's
that.
great.
Vicki?
And we couldn't have done it without the building being donated.
That's
to
right.
us. So
It's a great project
nice.
that's completed.
It was a great project. It turned out better than I thought.
Me
it
too,
would.
Doug.
There's
I
your
agree.
segue, Vicki. You have anything else besides?
Yeah, I did participate in the Port Authority meeting, and they have a business interested in urban pests. They were going to be talking to that business about reducing the cost of part of the lots that are available because of being unbuildable. So I don't know where that's going to go. I guess that's going to be kind of negotiated in whether or not there is a purchase done of those additional lots. And then they made the decision not to provide the grant funding for the business that's in Baker, the UPS store. So that was a decision that was made by the Port Authority, and then we day before yesterday. So that's all I have.
Vicki, I thought they had already approved doing that. Am I incorrect? The one in Baser?
No, the city did not. The city didn't approve the loan. Apparently, that they did not. There was a. Wasn't quite sure. Doug may have more insight into what was done by the city of Baser, but they did not give a portion to kind of. They had asked the Port Authority, I think, to kind of assist with it. The Port Authority turned that down, but the Port Authority also determined that they were not going to provide grant funding for the project. So Barsh's project was denied
Okay.
on Tuesday.
City didn't have budget for it.
Okay.
And then there was some discussion about making payments over 5 years or whatever, but something about cash basis law that didn't pass legal muster. So
Yeah, I knew they were waiting for a response back from Baser, but I thought it had been completed. Okay.
kind of like us, we just don't have that money
Yeah.
sitting around
Yeah.
to give out.
I have one thing. I would like to especially thank Lisa and Jeremy from LCDC for attending the collaboration meeting on the Pantex plant. They were there yesterday, and I appreciated that.
Good. Glad to hear that.
Vicki, do you have anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
All right. There's
Motion to adjourn.
nothing else. I'll accept the
Second.
motion to adjourn. Second. Aye. We are adjourned.
Bye.